We rush like fourth down.
I be taking win, we don't mess with laws. I be taking win, we don't mess with laws. I be taking win, we don't mess with laws. I be taking win, we don't mess with laws. We been on that paper chasing all that fashion. We been on that paper chasing what you ration.
Been in the grind now, we ready for prime time, ready for shine now, we ready to get smile. On the rise, all eyes up on us now. Blast off spaceships till the touchdown.
Energy level on high, put that trouble on fire. Double it down, I'ma spit it around. Click, clack, boom, we the best in town. Energy level on high, put that trouble on fire. Double it down, I'ma spit it around. Click, clack, boom, we the best in town. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though.
What's good? Whoa, look at this lighting. This is crazy. What's going on, yo? I'm just trying to figure it all out. 1, 2, 1, 2. Wow. Well, I'm going to have it actually isn't that real lighting. It's the situation on my computer. But we're going to run with it. We're going to figure it out. I'm trying to enhance my regular lighting here to help it out, but it's more than that. Check 1, 2, 3. I was trying to broadcast from Clubhouse too, just to see if we can do that. 1, 2, 3. Clubhouse is coming in a little cheesy. Let's try it. I got a better idea. We're gonna try it like this. We're gonna see if we can maneuver just like this. Give me 1 second, folks. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yes, yes, yes. 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, yeah. That's a little cheesy on the microphone, I have to admit. But we're gonna try to do what we can do. 1, 2, 1, 2. You can hear me there in Clubhouse land. All right, they can. So Clubhouse can hear me. If you're in Clubhouse, we just started the room over there. Last week you heard me plugging away, talking about Clubhouse, telling you what are you doing if you're not in Clubhouse, people. What are you not doing if you're in Clubhouse? I'm getting all kinds of messages here from people far in between, nearby, and all that. So hello everybody. Shout out to Quo, shout out to Fly, shout out to Fee, to LD, all part of the equation. For real. Speaking of for reals, I'm going to try to show you a reel pretty soon. We'll see how that works out. We're just going to have a relatively quick show. Next week, we got a big show. We got Slim Kid Trey and the Angel coming through. They got to join out how it goes down. He's from the Far Side. If you like me, you love Far Side, all things Far Side, and the Angel and Far Side label mates. So that's going to be a great show. I got to get my lighting straight for that. We're in family vacay mode right now too, by the way. And I see you, Jonah. I see your comment too. Sometimes I get that as well too. Just depends on what you're on. We doing family vacay. We getting ready. We busting out like real soon. So that's why I'm shortening the show a little bit. We were originally gonna do we try to do the summer hiatus like the big time people. You know what I mean? And try to get it in there. We're ramping up. Don't tell anyone. we ramping up for the return of Quo. You know what I mean? We ramping up for the return of Quo. So as we get a little bit deeper here into the summer, you might see a couple Quo sightings coming through. Quo and I, we always working, always trying to figure out something cool to come with. So if you don't know, if you're not a fan of ProQuo, if you don't know who ProQuo is, the ProQuo Show is Quo and I. That's how we started it. Label mate Fly, LD behind the scenes from the label Freedom Corner brand out of Jackson, Mississippi. And that's the movement. But part of what I put in the title today, and you see what I have there, Bernard Hankins and Pro Lyrical, that is not true. That is always promotion going on for our Sunday show. So we do a Sunday show. If you're around, usually check us out on Sundays. This Sunday, we will not be doing the show, however, due to the vacay, but do not want you to forget about us because we are here in spirit and we do a show for introverts. And a lot of people will be like, yo, it's hard to believe you're introvert. Like you always on the mic, you talking, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And shout out to Bernard. Yeah, Bernard, the only reason I knew that I had that up there is because your comment. But we going on vacay, so we can't do the show this particular Sunday. But it's hard to believe that someone in front of the mic and screen all the time is an introvert. And as Bernard's quote that we use almost as our tagline attests to, it has to do with being socially introverted and being an extrovert in the creative sense, right? So we got to get a shirt for that. So let's say social introvert, creative extrovert. I think we put creative extrovert on the back. It would only be fitting, right? You get where I'm going there. And I've been talking more and more about that with comfortability. The wellness piece that I put in the description of what we're talking about for the actual show itself. Really just trying to hammer this out because this has been going on a lot in my circles and ciphers. I've been talking a lot with educators, heavily talking and involved with educator discussions, really heavily over the last week. And mental well-being and physical well-being. And should we even give the disclaimer? Do we have to say mental well-being? Like, shouldn't it just be part of the well-being, right? Like mental health and physical health, their health, so it's kind of like we almost cheapen it when we're like in our mental well-being, but you know what we mean, because that is the sort of colloquial way that we say it, right? We kind of defer to that being something also. Like, hey, someone says, hey, how you doing? That might be the only time that some of us think about that. Not so good. We mean like how we're feeling, like mentally in a lot of cases, right? But sometimes people will answer that and be like, oh, how you doing? Oh, my next door, or whatever. You get the physical kind of stuff. But normally, if people are just doing the quick check-in, just like, hey, what's going on? Oh, how's that? How are things? Oh, great. We're talking in very general terms, right? We're not normally going to break down and say something like, well, mentally it's been a little tough. It's been challenging. Like, we don't want that weight and that burden on someone else, right? And even the fact that we can describe it as weight and a burden must mean that it's a heavy lift, right? So if it's this heavy lift, it's like, what are we doing to mitigate that lift throughout? We would attest, Bernard Hankins and I, when we do the ProQuo Show, when we do Introverse, is that the outlet is sort of this creative side. It's more than an outlet. That's not even being fair. It's sort of a life calling, and it becomes something that we seek. And through that which we seek, it becomes our release. It becomes our expression. That a lot of times the introverts, and there's thousands of us, millions of us, obviously, right? Probably close to 1 billion of people who define themselves as introverts, who have some sort of extroverted desire to be a creative. And so you just see that dichotomy a lot of times. And what can we do for people who haven't found that piece of themselves? I think about this for our educators. I think, it's the great exodus. If you're not in education, people are leaving left and right in education. And I was at my university for the first time in a while. I was there to say my goodbyes to 3 faculty members, faculty and staff who were jumping. And one of them is retiring, maybe a little bit early. And, there's been some health challenges, without getting into all the personal, details. Another colleague, just better opportunity, just willing to travel. And sometimes that's what you have to do in higher education. But I can speak to this employee situation knowing that there's no respite for this employee to do their job. It's a team of one, and that becomes a mental challenge, right? It becomes a mental fatigue and exhaustion, and really nobody to kind of help you out there. And that's no fault of anybody other than funding, right? And uh, and one other colleague also a different opportunity um, that is definitely a more lucrative opportunity as well. And I think it's only natural as we promote our employees' well-beings or our coworkers, our colleagues, or even just people in life that we should hope that they find these opportunities. And a lot of times, people in administrative positions they have that cling. I'm guilty of it too. I don't want these people to leave. They're like, yo, these are great people. They don't report to me or anything like that, but we don't want to see them go, but we do wish them well and we want the best for their health. When you can see people that you work with in your team, your family, or whatever, who are going through it, it's only natural to say, man, I wish I could do something. And this brings me to the top of the food chain in our deal. Shout out to my man Sin. My man Sin has really been going through it. The unbelievable ebbs and flows being inside this business in the nitty gritty. Sin, when I say top of the food chain, a lot of you have seen LD from the Freedom Corner family. So my label imprint that I started way back in the day with Fee was Fat Sam Records. We started Fat Sam Records, and I kept my publishing called Sam's Fat Music. And I've always used that. It's something I started with Fee, and I've always used that. And kind of as like in the back of my mind, I'd be like, you know what? Something really goes big. I'll be able to hook Fee up a little bit too, because he's part of that, right? And same thing with my Crew Invasion, right? We start my Crew Invasion Entertainment. You're always trying to think like on the publishing side or on something, hey, in case it blows, maybe I can bring them along for a little bit of it, right? We're always trying to like help out the fam or whatever. But the way that we're organized in this current iteration is it goes from Dotted Eye Music and Entertainment, which is an outgrowth of the Eye and Invasion Entertainment that we started in Cambridge with my man Sick Man. Shout out to Dread. And I was about to throw some back in the days pictures of him. We've been doing, Fee and I have been doing a lot of back in the days kind of promotion for our song. And we're going through a lot of the back in the days pictures. I'm going to share some with you in a second. Sometimes reminiscent. It's funny, the euphoria that comes over us when we think about some of the best times in our lives, right? And that can help you. And as a coping mechanism, even when you're going through something that's difficult. And the question really comes down to, what are you doing really for your own, mental health, mental sanity? Hopefully to the point that we don't even need to get into mental health. And Bernard, I appreciate that. How are you, by the way? I'm doing well. Thank you. Mentally and physically. See what he did there. And so when I think of Sin had all kinds of challenges that were, I don't want to give away his whole personal story or anything like that, but he had a physical repercussion of being so busy, right? And literally, you can be like, we've all had family and friends who've like had some kind of a quick accident that gets compounded, right? It should have been just a quick accident or whatever, and you hope that people aren't severely injured, but something happens and it gets compounded quickly and it can spiral out of control. And even the way that it starts, when we really collect and think back, like, hey, how did this happen? What was the reason? Normally it's because we're being pulled in way too many directions and our body's like, check. Like, I went and got I'll show you the demonstration here. I got a new case for my phone, right? Of course, I went and got one that had the Galaxy on there, right? For my Galaxy. Other phone is cracked. So the fact that the phone is cracked, it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't really rely on this phone. Let me go get the new one with the 8K video, right? Which has already been very helpful for me. I've dropped this thing like 6 times since I've put the heavy case on. I had a cheaper case on. I'm like, you know what? This was the cheaper case right here. The clear one, it's sleek, it's cool. And I was hoping that it would still charge in my charger in my car and the wireless charger, and it did. And then luckily I put the thick one on and it's still charged. I was like, yo, it's going right through the case. This is great. But wouldn't you know, I dropped this thing 6 times. It's unbelievable. It's like a magnet for me dropping it now that I have the better case on it. Wasn't dropping it before. Like, I was able to juggle to a point, if you get the metaphor here. I was able to juggle while I was consciously aware, like, yo, I need to be real careful with this. The second that we feel comfortable and we can start juggling more, a ball is going to fall out of the air. Right? To keep that metaphor going. This is the ball that has fallen out of the air now 6 times. I didn't drop it once when I had to. Well, a half time I dropped it. It was really slight. It was like sitting on my lap and it had this on it and fell on the floor. No biggie, right? This withstands 6 feet. this withstands ridiculous amount of feet, right? And the edges are strong and so forth. It's not the end all be all, but it's going to work. My point, obviously, is that once we think we're good, once we relax, is when we slip up. We relax. When I say relax, I don't mean you don't need to take a break. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We do. But once we start saying by relax, we mean, oh, I can juggle more balls. I can pile more on my plate. I can take a little bit more. The phone trying to tell me that you're juggling too much. And our bodies in these weird random accidents. I'm not huge on just weird random, right? Some things are random, but a lot of times things that we're doing have repercussions if we choose to just step back and think one more step. Like, what is it that made me slip when I was going to the bathroom? What is it that made me ding my car, right? Like, were we rushing, and why were we rushing, right? What caused whatever you want to have? If we choose to think about it, we can usually find what that rationale was. And normally it's that we're not giving ourselves time. So my recommendation, this is just me, I'm interested in your own as well. If you are juggling a lot of balls, right? I do juggle, right? You want to get to the point where you can juggle and it's kind of automatic, right? You're juggling 3 balls and you're comfortable, right? But you don't just say, yo, throw me a fourth now, I'm real good. You got practice to bring in that 4th ball if you're going to try juggling 4 balls. I see people juggling 4 balls so fluidly. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you even do that, right? People say that when they see someone with 3, but I juggle 3 well. I can't juggle 4 very well. Throw a 4th one at me, I might have it going for a little bit, but I generally don't know the algorithm that well. Something's got to give, and I'm not ready for it to give. My computer's about ready to give too. Let me try to iron that up if I can. Let's see. Hold on. We're gonna take a temporary break here. Temporary ProQuo break. Quality programming is when you just take a break right in the middle and you just be like, let me fix that. All right. Cool. That was one too many balls for me to juggle right there, right? Let me hide the Bernard comment there too. And salute to you as well. If you're juggling too much, you try to go to the 4th ball, you haven't rehearsed the 4th ball, you're probably going to drop that 4th ball. So in life, it's like, don't try to pile more on until you've practiced little by little being able to adapt to the next thing. Like, do you fluidly have the other stuff down? Because if you don't, something's going to give. And if it doesn't feel fluid, and if it isn't on autopilot, I say this rapping a lot. If you can't rap it like while you're in the gym on a treadmill, or if you're on a bike or whatever, and you're running around and thinking almost about something else, then it's not on autopilot and you don't know it. So that means when you're at a show, you're going to be distracted real easy and you're going to forget what the lyric is or whatever, if that matters to you. Matters to me. And we always talk about how these days, if we haven't written the rhymes, Bernard and I were speaking about this too. If we haven't written the rhyme in the traditional sense, it's easier to forget. If you just like bang it out quickly and you type it on the computer or something like that, those ones are harder to commit to the hard drive. But the ones we write out, something about that paper to pen that we can remember. So my recommendation is find time to have a meeting with yourself. You got that? Speaking of pen to paper, you might want to write that one down. Find time to schedule a meeting with yourself. So when you're looking at your agenda, if you have one, if you even write things down on a daily basis, write in a time to have a sit down with you, right? That might be 20 minutes. And it's the moment of Zen. Really is. It's the moment of where you checking in with you. So that when people ask you, yo, how you doing? You have a real answer. That if they have real time, you might be able to give them a little bit more than the traditional, yeah, it's all good, man. You might be able to have a response. What up, tree? This is what I mean. So I did one, and then at the end of it, I decided to make a video. Posted the video to YouTube the other day. It was about substitutes in education, because it's one of the topics I'm talking about a lot. But I went to my little spot of Zen here where I live, right? It's just like a little waterfall, a little park kind of situation, right? Something about the trees and the grass, you're like, this is dope. I went there. I just sat there. I was doing the walk, and one of my streams is having connectivity issues. It's telling me to juggling too many balls. There's 8 streams out there right now, by the way, folks. So I went there, premeditated, and said, I'm going to sit down with myself. Not necessarily talk to myself, but it's kind of like a slightly more active meditation. My eyes aren't closed. I'm not sitting like this position right here. I don't know if you can see Aang right there, but I wasn't sitting in the lotus position, right? My son, by the way, just bought all 3 books for the trip we're going on. He's so excited. He's like, Daddy, it's the first time I bought this comic. And I'm like, it's not really a comic. It's actually a paperback, but that's a different story. It's just, I encourage it. Trying to not get too sidetracked, but I am. I scheduled the time. I went with myself and I was like, the reason is I can feel my tipping point now. I can feel when there's too much juggling. I knew it. I knew there was too much juggling. I sat down, I scheduled the 20 minutes with myself, and I'm just sitting there chilling. And I'm really in the moment. I'm really just paying attention to like the leaves, where I'm sitting, the water. And there's something about paying attention to everything is almost like not paying attention to anything. Meaning I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not even thinking about the check-in with myself this morning, but this is the trick that I do, because then it allows me to like clear the palate in a way that I can't even explain. And I'm sure some of you guys have had that situation, right? Yeah, I appreciate it too. Definitely. Thanks. I forget to share all these things, but I should from the different sources. I tend to share the Facebook ones more so because they're easier to share from this. Anyways, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about nothing as much as I possibly can, right? I'm looking at trees and stuff, and I can't help but thinking like how nice of a day it is. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is like, I'd be greedy if I asked for a nicer day than this, right? But then I started thinking about it. I was like, there's a couple of mosquitoes over here all the time because of the water. I'm starting to think, I should have brought I'm start going into my planning mode. I'm like, I should have brought the off, right? And then I'm thinking, is there another spot? My mind starts drifting. I'm like, I want to do that video after. And I'm like, is there another spot on here that's a little more quiet in this whole compound of where I live? Because there's water over here. This other spot is close to the pool. Other spot over here is a lot of cars over by the fence that I like to sit at right there outside the fence. And I just start drifting now into thinking, oh, where's a quiet spot? And it actually got me back to thinking about, well, this actually was a quiet spot. You just rattled your brain thinking about the mosquitoes, right? And there really weren't mosquitoes. There was like 2. I saw them. They weren't really near me. So I'm like worrying about something that I really can't really fix at the moment unless I'm willing to get up. But I came there committed to say, yo, I'm going to sit here and actually have my no doubt tree, actually have my little moment of zen, right? So I'm just chilling. I feel like I cleared up about 4 things because in the silence, I started thinking about what has been slipping away. What has been, I feel like I've lost control of. Like, meaning, I'm not talking super deep. I literally mean like calendar stuff at the first point. I'm like, my Outlook calendar for my university job is separate from my Google calendar. Right. And I'm like, it'd be cool if I put those in one place. And you can. Doesn't take much work, but I don't have them. I have them separate. And I'm like, I've been slacking on putting stuff into Google, but I've been actually doing okay on the Outlook. But I'm in 2 different worlds because I'm not really heavy in the Outlook world in the summer as much as I normally would be, my day-to-day process of checking. So I slack on putting the stuff in. And I started thinking to myself, you know what I need to do? I just need to get back to writing it down. It was the point I was making earlier about writing the rhymes. It was what I knew I wanted to come back to. I just need to start writing it down. So I started writing down, just going through day of the week and just quiet, right? But before I started the writing, I was doing this in the park. But I got back and I did the writing. I'm like, I need to write down. So I just started thinking. It was actually fun for me. I was like, let's start with Sunday. What do I have to do on Sunday? What do I have to do on Monday? What do I have to do on Tuesday? Like, what things didn't I do? Now, I didn't get it all. And by the way, this wasn't today. This was a few days back. So I'm thinking of like, what did I not get done? And then I'm like, okay. And then I got the next week coming up. And I was thinking about what's coming up again. Are there any repeatables? And I started thinking about, I got like multiple calendars, much more than the ones I just said. And I'm like, I need to streamline the calendar process. But in the meantime, I'm just going to write it down. And all kinds of stuff that I realized has been slipping through the cracks has been there. I just gave myself time to think about it. We're actually working on getting personal thing here. We're getting a puppy. We actually purchased the puppy. Puppy's on the way. Puppy's adorable, ridiculously cute. Puppy's coming, right? But there's so much stuff that you got to do when you got a puppy. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of things you have to do if you're trying to do it right. And we're trying to do it right because it's mostly for my son, right? I love dogs too. Some of you may know. So for me, that just sitting down and chilling was like a metaphorical breath of fresh air in a breath of fresh air, literally, figuratively, figuring out all the stuff that had been slipping through the cracks. It's like my subconscious knew that things were slipping through the cracks, and I just had to kind of grab it and take control. And after doing that, the feeling is like the Zen master, like you're in control. Like I guess Zen master and control isn't necessarily don't go together, but I was thinking more about Aang. But he's an airbender, you know what I mean? Control the air. I just felt in control, like I had it back, and I felt like things were stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking. And I'm really good at this phase of my life of improvising things that I've done 100 times. Like, yeah, I can walk in and teach the class if I didn't have a lesson, but I was having a dream that my first day of class happened and I had no lesson ready and I had to wing it. And I was like, I would never wing my first day. Like, I might wing my 5th day or something if it's in a sequence of stuff I'm doing, and I don't need the notes. You know, I really don't at this point. I don't need notes on stuff I've taught a bazillion times, or even things that I thought about a lot, right? Just like a lot of times in rehearsing a show, you might have, I was talking about this with Fee today about Wu-Tang. It's some shows when I was backstage before. It was like, you know, they just show up and they're kind of like, yo, y'all ready? Like, it was barely anything, and they just go out and do it. And they were coming in like separate buses. They weren't, it wasn't like they were driving together going over the show. They were just there. Boom. They've done it a 1,000 times, right? So the whole, you don't want to be winging it, but you get comfortable being able to wing it. Sometimes it's good, even if you can wing it, just to force yourself not to wing it, right? Don't be that dude or do that. Don't be that person who wants to walk in and wing it and play Joe Cool all the time. And that's what I wanted to tie it back to on the education side too. And the entertainment side as well. It's the same thing. It's like, just because you know you're nice like that doesn't mean you should act like you're nice like that all the time, because something's going to slip through the cracks and it could be massive. And in entertainment, what happens is you get these, it's like the Eminem song, you get one shot, right? You get the one shot to blow. It's not truthful, but there's usually one big shot that you just don't want to mess up. In truth, you might get like 5 or 6 big shots, and hopefully you learn from the first one that you didn't put your all into. But you do not want that to consistently be happening, because then that becomes your reputation, that you're somebody who's like slacking or whatever, and it's not happening, and people are just like, next, right? I saw a really cool graphic of, and this made me take some pause, because I usually manage my life so that I'm just on time, meaning I value my time. So I don't want to be 10 minutes early to your event. I don't want to be fashionably late. I don't find anything cool in that. In fact, I feel a little thing in my, although I come in late to anything, like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, right? Kind of thing. But because I have to play it so close, all it takes is one thing to throw me off track. So I'm trying to make the commitment to respect other people's time more, because of this graphic that I've seen, which really explains it really well. It's like, you that dude who comes into the meeting late, and granted, a lot of us know the meeting is a waste of our time to begin with, but that's another issue. But if you're coming into a meeting and people do need you, and there's 10 people there and you're 10 minutes late, you actually wasted 100 minutes. Pretty simple math, right? 10 times 10. You wasted 10 minutes for each of those people. And that really compounds the situation. It's almost like how, it feels like when you're watching a virus spread or something like that. You're like, yo, you wasted this person's time, this person's time. It connects and it runs through the whole room. It's not just your 10 minutes. You know, when we stop and think outside of ourselves. So a lot of times, I think it's a badge of honor sometimes in entertainment. The whole fashionably late thing is like, I try to make a point in entertainment, like in shows and stuff, to generally be as on time as possible within reason, right? It's not like if someone's like, yo, we need you there 2 hours early. I'm kind of like, no, you don't. Why you need me there 2 hours early? Like, exactly tell me what it is. Cause I want to trim that down. Trust me. I want to get that to like half hour. I'm cool, because things happen, right? But I'm not saying, this happens in a lot of places. Some people are just nervous and they want you to be there 3 hours early, but they ain't paying you to be there 3 hours, right? It's not contracted. They just pop that on. That's different. That's a whole different ball of yarn. But I'm saying, if someone has an event going on and they're telling you, yo, you should get there at this time. Yeah, get there 10 minutes early, right? Get there 20, 30, whatever it is you got to do, because you won't feel like you're juggling the balls. And it feels crazy, and people vibe off that energy. And that becomes your energy when you step on a stage. I've done many shows where I've just walked in and got on stage. Man, I flew to Chicago, and I literally, this was out of my control, but flight delays, COVID, there was fog. It was just ridiculous, right? I walked in the building looking at my watch going, I got 1 minute until I'm actually on the stage. And wouldn't you know, they were exactly on time. I walked in, saw the assistant show producer, right? And they were like, on the headphone and on the cell phone, and they're like, here's Pro right now, he's ready to go. And I was ready to go, and I did. Way I prepared is I said, I'm going to be coming, and there's a very good possibility with so many variables that I could be pretty close to on time. That's how I like to position it. I didn't think I'd be that close to on time, and they were telling me take the train from the airport because it'd be way cheaper and it'd be about as fast. And I'm like, you're leaving out the variable of the fact that trains are on a variable schedule. I can't afford to lose if I'm in between the next train, right? Especially when they were 15 minutes for this particular train. I was like, that's a swing of 30 minutes, bro. That's like 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on how you place it, it ain't really just 15. That's close to 30 minutes if you screw that up. But I, I'm like, I don't have 15, let alone 30 minutes to swing. And where I was going to get dropped off, someone had to come pick me up and then get me back. So it's a lot of time encompassing in this, what seems like only 15 minutes kind of a deal. And I was like, I don't have that time. And I made the decision to pay for the expensive Uber that was like $60. And my travel was reimbursed and expenses and stuff like that. I could have played it cheap. I could have just been like, yeah, let me, like I had money for travel as well. I could have said, oh, let me cut into that. I'm good, but I literally got into the building as close as you possibly could. And I'm stepping onto the stage, and I told them that I'd have my stuff ready to go. In fact, planned for that and said, I'm actually, if you have a 1/8 inch output and you've already tested for a phone sound in there and it's decent, I don't care. I'll rock right off that. They took my phone, plugged it right into the thing, and we went from that. I had it set up on BandLab as this was the backup because I had a drive, I had the email, I had the whole thing. But my peace of mind happened from that I did everything that I needed to do, and everything that went wrong did go wrong. That Murphy's Law thing came true, right? But it's like, that was incredible, the fact that made it all work with a little bit of forethought, and we still got it done. And I'm doing the math, trust me, in the car, and I'm like, yo, bro, like this is going to come down to like, I'm starting to see it. I'm like, if everything works out perfectly, there's a possibility this could come down to 1 minute. I do that all the time, and I shave things close. But what I'm saying is, in terms of my thinking about it, the graphic really helped illuminate for that. It's not just, there might be two people on the other side waiting for you, and you just tell them, you give them the disclaimer ahead of time, and especially in the entertainment industry, that's two people worrying. That's two people stress. And it goes back to the mental health thing we're talking about. It isn't just the time. It isn't just you're wasting their time. You're causing stress for people when they're depending on you to be somewhere or before they need to start or speak over or what have you. So just back into the mental stress part and the mental health. And I led in by saying that mental health isn't always about the mental. It's more about the health overall, and that mental shouldn't actually be sort of subservient to like the well-being and physical health, right? We say wellness, we do mean body, spirit, mind, that kind of thing. So that's my kind of little preachy advice there. Sorry if that was too preachy. But people, they'll ask you, they'll say, yo, tell me how you did X, Y, and Z. And then you start giving some of those things, like, how do you stay level-headed? How do you stay calm? How do you stay, and some of these things we have to remind ourselves of. I'm going to share something with you, I think, directly from Facebook. And I think that Facebook won't shut down an algorithm if I'm sharing it through Facebook. Let's see if I can be successful on that. Let's see. I'm using, wow, this might be tough. All right, we're going to go to my Facebook here, and we're going to try to see if this will let me go with sound too. Oops, it's fee. We're going to see if I can go with sound. I don't know if that's going to do the sound though, because it didn't give me the usual look. What up? You get one big shot, so don't act like a big shot. I like that, Bernard. Let me share a couple of those. Put that up there. You only get one shot to blow. So let me try sharing this again, because it's not giving me the sound thing that it usually does. So I'm not feeling confident. Let's try. Someone's gonna have to tell me if this shared sound or not. Okay. Tell me if this shares sound. Is that playing the sound? No sound? All right, thanks. Low sound. All right, cool.
I had the ear, those pictures, so I can say, look, math is cool. Science and technology, engineering and mathematics are just one pillar of truth. For me, they're the ones that resonate with me the most when I think of quantum mechanics, when I think of nanotechnology, I think the closest thing we have today to magic. Like, if you really understand what's going on at a quantum level with particles that quickly, my math skills are on the side. Most kids don't have that opportunity. It was cool for me to be like, flipping the ribbon and show nobody has ever been able to keep with a difficult skill, like rhyming real fast. Or I sit in my room all day. When I begin in the rhythm, and then I be really beginning my rhyming and making a miracle out of material that has never been able to find in the pound, come out of the venom, and physical, medical, common, the pinnacle, medical, mineral. Then I get into it, no one has ever been able to go with the lyrical flow. That was cool. They liked it too. Yeah. All of this. Too many entry points into. I have a book that's all about this. It's called ProQuo Show. I took my album and all my songs and I correlated it to all the chapters of the book. I call it an album. And I wrote about some of those entry points. One of the entry points for me has always been the history of the music industry, how it basically is an enslavement situation where you have a label making $10 traditionally for when they sell a CD and the artist gets one. And the artists are lining up to do this. Like, please let me be down. Let me get one. In $1 million advance, you have to basically sell back 1 million records to actually pay off your advance. $9 meanwhile going to
Stop sharing that.
clearing and profit. I teach this lesson in my classroom. I was lucky enough to have quite a hiring business plan to be in, unless you want to convince the kid that you should be on the other side of the desk, right?
I'm having a little glitch here, so give me 1 sec.
And get some of that street entrepreneurialism into your hustle, because this just isn't doing it for me. And when kids find out, basically the end of the joke here, it is a joke. In fact, it's a sad joke, and that you're going to owe money after your first album. You've gone platinum. What you're realizing is that what you've seen on.
Cool. Yeah, not sure why that was so low on the volume, but thanks for letting me know. Pun intended, because that's what I say in Yo That's Pro. Thanks for letting me know, yo. So it's funny because that TED, that TEDx that I did, I want to give a little background for that. So I'm showing the highlights of it, and it wasn't all gravy. It definitely wasn't all gravy. Meaning that it's easy to show the highlights of that and for it to look like a home run. It was like an 85% out of 100. And part of it is because of the juggle that I was explaining. So I cringe sometimes when I watch the full version of that, because I told them, this was stupid me. I told them that I was comfortable with, they were like, hey, do you think you could just, and basically what was asked from some of the people, I don't even know if they were the main people running it, because it wasn't like my personal coach or whoever, the person that works with you to deliver your thing. Yeah, going on vacay, but not tonight. I thought that it was like really, really important. And I wasn't considering what was important for me, right? And so when you do a TED Talk, and I had a chance to be a part of really 3 of them, 2 of them where I was doing what I was doing there, like featured person delivering something, right? And I mean featured, because in that I was closing the show. And in the other one that I did, like I was like the entertainment and the presenter kind of thing. It was more performance based, but it was like, it was planned. Like this thing was about transformation and the transformational change. And they were like, my other TED was called The Transformational Power of Hip Hop. And they were like, perfect, educator, artist, music. It was about spirituality, it was about philosophy, like all these things that I'm into, right? And so they were like, yo, this is going to be like the epicenter of what we do. But it was mostly rapping. And then the other one I did was a guest spot for the event that was to get people to their final TED Talk kind of thing. It's kind of like a last chance effort for some people to get voted in to the TED. And so they did an entire mock TEDx event that was like a TEDx full event, except only a couple of them got through. And I was the guest performer who had done a couple TEDs kind of thing, right? So those are the 3. And that one was the full me talking, but I perform when I'm in it. So this is what they asked me to do. I wonder if you would do the same thing. Most people would kill to have a TED Talk. My man Bernard has done one too. It's amazing. I cringe way less when I watch his. It's not cringeworthy. It's not cringeworthy. In fact, not as one word makes a difference. It's not cringeworthy. It's amazing, right? Mine to me is cringeworthy when I watch it, because I know that I compromised, meaning I let them sort of talk me into adjusting my thing on the fly because I'm like, oh, I can wing it. No problem. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And that's true. If it was a show, I've done a bazillion shows, but that was my first TEDx. In my head, I'm thinking it's probably going to be my only TEDx, right? And I'm like, yeah, I can wing it. Do you know all your slides? What you're saying is on a reader, right? A prompter is on the thing. You can see your slides, meaning like they're all right there. At these really good events. I don't mean all your words. I mean, some people have their words, right? But I had my slides, and you can see them on the floor of what's projecting behind you. So because truthfully, they needed me to jazz it up a bit after what had taken place before me, right? They were like, "Can you just come out heavy with the rap stuff, like really quick at the beginning?" And that was kind of part of the plan. I was going to do a little bit of rapping, but not, they wanted it almost like concert mode. And I was last so that I could go into concert mode at the end. We were really going to open it up and we're going to turn it into a party and all that kind of stuff. And me do like a rap show at the end of the thing. It's part of the reason I was last. But I kind of reimagined that and made the gist of the excitement really happen up front. So I went longer with the rap, in other words, than I was supposed to go, to get back the energy in the room and really get people involved with this freestyle. The words are up on the screen. And this was going to be like a 30-second teaser into what I was going to do later at the end. But instead, it's like a 3-minute thing at the beginning. And because of that, it threw my whole thing out whack. None of the slides are where they're supposed to be. And I'm like, yeah, I can figure it out. And so I'm just going off the gist of what I'm supposed to be talking about, kind of what I'm doing right now. And there's a big difference between going off the gist of what you want to talk about when you're comfortable and there's not a lot of things coming at you, as opposed to something that is highly as scripted and choreographed as TEDx performances. So in my head, there I am juggling again. I'm juggling the whole time, and I'm like, the whole never let him see you sweat thing is kind of coming from me, but I'm probably sweating. I'm on stage going, damn, what I'm about to say is not even in line with what's behind me right now. So I got to figure out on the fly what to cut and what not to cut. And watching it back, I can see where I was fidgeting with the slide mover and stuff. And the reason I'm fidgeting with it is because it's not where I want it to be. It's not because it's not working, but listening to me, you would think the thing's broken. It's like I'm blaming the sound man kind of thing. I'm like, oh, I can't get this thing to work. No, I never practiced trying to have it jump ahead 3 slides at once. And it was going on its own pace. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. I was like, I didn't need it to do any of that. I just needed to make sure it was like 1 slide at a time, kind of on pace. But here I am trying to jump ahead 4 or go back 4. And of course, it's giving me issues, right? So something I hadn't planned, part of the whole I'll wing it thing. And I'm thinking in my head, what can I cut? What can I delete? Where can I come smooth with this? What can I do? It's too much to be thinking. We've all been in those situations once or twice. And the more you practice, and we encourage this, Bernard and I encourage this as part of our thing that we do with introverts, and the PD that kind of goes along with it, is like, you want everyone to practice the art of freestyle. But that's not substituting for being lazy and saying, yo, I only freestyle. Why do you only freestyle? Because you're lazy and you don't write. Right? I'm saying, or you don't have skills to write. We're not saying that. We're not saying don't be the educator that walks into the classroom and just freestyles because you've not planned a thorough lesson plan before. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, think it out, overly plan it, right? Think about what you can do, and then be willing to come off the script when you sort of feel like what I was saying earlier, when you're rapping and you can do it on the treadmill, or you can rap walking through the gym, and it's kind of like you're like Neo in the Matrix. No, like nothing's going to bother you or distract you. There's certain raps that I have that are like part of my body. I could say them a bazillion times. Nothing is going to throw me off. But those ones that I wrote on the computer that I wrote like last week, I have no idea. Like, I need all the training wheels I can get, I'm one of those MCs to say, yo, don't put your vocals under the track. Put mine lightly under the track so that I might know that I'm in the right spot, right? It kind of give me a little feeling of reassurance. Oh yeah, I can hear myself saying that. That's what I am supposed to be saying, right? So it's that level of planning. It's that level of detail that can bring out confidence for people when they say, yo, how are you so confident? Whatever. Yeah, you practice, but you're doing the little things too. And it helps make sure the mental's there. So again, it doesn't feel like you're juggling. And I'm just saying, when you juggle too much, one ball eventually is going to fall. And so I'm just shouting out subliminally some of the people on my team who've been going through it, juggling too many balls. I know it may apply to you. If it does, great. If it doesn't, that's cool. But it's definitely applied to me in my life. And that's why I was giving the story about being in the park and what it was doing. It was just taking a second, like literally smelling the roses kind of thing, right? Maybe not literally, because I don't think they were roses, but smelling the flowers, you out there in the breeze, you're thinking about it, and you're like, man, let me take a second to breathe and think about where I'm really at. how often do you schedule time with yourself? I'm guessing you don't. Truthfully, I'm guessing you don't. You might do some facsimile of it. Um, oh, nice, Bernard. I did not know that. They were trying to get him to cut his poetry part out. Yeah, that's a no. That's a non-starter. No, I'm not cutting. And when you see Bernard's piece, and shout out to, if you go to Bernard Hankins, I think it's .com, bernardhankins.com. You go to check out his TED Talk. He just kills the raps in there out of nowhere. I mean, basically it's spoken word, but it's spoken word like from an MC. And it's just out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, here it comes. Boom, right? And it just kills. It's just the way that it kills because it was well set up. Never let him steal your superpower. That's it. That's one other thing I would say too. I don't know if you have this, anybody else out there who has a superhero skill, right? Whatever your superhero skill is. Do you feel self-conscious when you're doing your skill because other people don't have it? You know what I mean? Do you ever think like that? Like, I'm thinking that someone's like, oh, here goes Pro again, Mr. Rapidy Rap guy, right? You're hearing that voice that's actually not there. That's your voice. It's in your head. That's your assumption of what people are saying about you, because it's kind of something you might say about them. Right? Like if there's that person, we've all seen that person, right? But we're actually being that person in both ways. Talk about a mental juggling act. Like we're critiquing ourselves from ourselves' point of view, getting us to not use our own superpower or to feel badly about it. Have you ever been in that situation? Like you're like, oh man, there's someone probably sitting over there. Will you just shut up and sit down and stop your rapidy? And you do. You will acquiesce to that. If you that's getting inside your own head, right? And there might be 20 people there that just were like, oh my God, that was amazing. It was life changing or whatever. And that one person that got in your head was you. Crazy. I know what's happened to me, right? Not judging you. I'm just telling you what's happened to me. And this can take us away from being the superhero. So I'm like, screw that. Be the super. If you're a superhero and people can't handle it, too bad. I was in Clubhouse because that's what I do. I was in Clubhouse 2 days ago, and there was a poet in there, dope poet, by the way. He's talking like superhero stuff and everything, right in my lane, right? And truthfully, I don't really know him like that. I've seen his name a few times, never really got to hear him. And the whole room, he's dedicating talking about haters. He's talking about all these haters, and someone's trying to tell him, yo, if you got haters, bro, you're doing something right. Like, and that's true. Trust me, like things I get in the back channel and stuff like that from someone at some point when everything's going too well, someone will knock you off the pedestal, right? It's the ebb and flow. It's the yin and yang. It's going to happen. If it isn't happening, you might want to say, I'm not going hard enough. It's kind of the idea, right? That's kind of the old adage. This dude's giving so much energy to things that aren't happening. I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, sound pretty good to me. Like, I only heard a couple seconds of him at first, like talking about him doing the poetry kind of. And I was like, oh, this is going to be really dope. I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm already a fan and I haven't even heard him. I'm like rooting for him already, which is what you want as an artist. You want people to be rooting for you. Because truthfully, everybody's rooting for you. They don't want you to stink. And, he does his thing and I'm like pleasantly surprised. Because normally when I hear people dwelling on haters for too long, I start to think like, maybe it's them. Maybe they're their own hater, kind of to my point. So he's on it. I'm like, yo, this dude's dope. I'm like, bro, I felt like shaking him. Like, bro, don't worry about those voices, especially when they're not here. They're not in this room. Don't bring that energy into a room where it doesn't exist. It's because we can do it ourselves. We do a great enough job, just convincing ourselves that someone is thinking what they're not thinking, even though I'm sure he was talking about an instance that really happened. Man, I used to get stuff on my Facebook right here, good old Facebook, which I think I had my Facebook account. And it's funny. Ask yourself when you got Facebook. I got Facebook like right at the jump. I was at LaSalle College and they were using Facebook. It was the first institution I know that was doing it. I think Facebook came out like 2006-ish. This was like not quite 2008, I believe. And I was like, Facebook, what's that? I think I heard about that. Isn't that the Harvard thing, And because there were articles coming out, but I hadn't been on it. They're like, yeah, it's like MySpace, right? But it's a little different. And all the students had the accounts too. And I was like, oh, what's going on? So that's when I started getting into it. I want to say late 07, very early 2008. That's how long I've been on there. Man, I go through that and I look at some of the messages that I had back from people, that was before like people were blocking and before we had these kind of things that we cared about where we didn't have terminology even back then, that we have now. I could ask you for like 10 words that have evolved from, people sliding in my DMs, kind of stuff like that. That lingo really wasn't there, right? So trolling wasn't a thing, right? But that's essentially what it was. people either trolling you or hitting you in your DMs and being like, man, you think you're so great, or yo, how come you never booked me for, that was the one I used to get all the time because I was promoting the majority of the shows for a few years earlier that were going on that were like on this underground level in Boston, and maybe a little bit better than underground every now and then, right? But for the most part, I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. I was everywhere because you can't outwork me, right? You're not going to outwork me, right? Like, give me 5 cents and I'm going to flip that 5 cents, right? I'm going to work that 5 cents until I make it 10. It's just going to be what I'm going to do. If I'm motivated, you cannot stop my motivation, right? And so people that didn't know this would be like, yo, where'd this dude come from? Like, oh yeah, I get off working while you're sleeping to this day. You know, I was saying this in a room the other day. It's like, I can push. I have, when you're doing the things that you love more than anything, in terms of like, you know, which one, two things I do, I love them with a true passion, right? I could leave teaching easier than I could leave hip hop because hip hop is the identity that I bring into teaching. But I love them both so much, and getting to do them, not necessarily teaching, but being an impact in educational spaces is huge. And making an impact when you have a microphone in your hand is also another huge one. Speaking of impact, I see somebody else I got to bring in for some impact too. But you know, when you're able to do those things and you can do them as part of your career, it's invigorating. It's super motivational. You're gonna get to the point where you feel like that you can't be stopped, right? But when that starts to come out, and when people sense that that's your vibe, there's always going to be somebody who's not as comfortable with them either, and that's the voice that we remember. So I'm remembering the people sliding in my DMs in a bad way in Facebook that are like, yo, how come you never booked me for a show? Is that a way to talk to somebody you want something from? Right? How come you never booked me for any shows? That's your intro? Like, never like, hey, bro, hey, I've come to a few of your shows, clearly, right? Because you wouldn't have anything to be asking about if you didn't know about what I was doing. So maybe you want to lead with, not bad to lead with it's the whole plus minus plus theory, like lead with a plus instead of a negative, right? You might get a little bit further. Speaking of plus, let me just bring in this man. What up? Oh man, he's looking clean. Oh, he's looking like he got a little delay on the Wi-Fi there. What's going on, Mr. Fly? I don't know if we got a vocal on Mr. Fly yet. I know that our logos are matching the shirt. It's these ProQuo colors are matching up really perfectly. Is your mic working yet? How you doing? You might want to jump in and jump back out, maybe. It is Fly. Yeah, and it's like when people sense that you feel that, that it's all going too well for you kind of thing. Like, who is this dude? Like, no, I'm like, when you're sleeping, I'm working. I like that. Like, you're not going to do that more than me. That's my thing. You might do equal, but you ain't going to do more. Like, I'm going to be, if I see that you're up at 2, I'm like, oh, I'm excited. Now I have a reason to get up at 2 kind of thing. Especially pre-family situations, right? When you don't have a wife and a kid necessarily at home, that's, you have an excuse to do you have no excuse if you're in that situation. If I see somebody that's like single and just doing this, I'm like, yo, you don't have to hustle, right? That's how you be thinking in your head. But it can come it can land with somebody else wrong. And so you need to get those kind of messages. You need to physically get them, but don't make it like you're getting those messages if you're not. Like, don't make it like people are, all these haters. Just because 2 people said something about you out of like a crowd of 300, are you going to say you got haters? Or you're going to say you got 298 people that are following you and enjoy what you're doing, right? Like, that's what we got to do. We got to pay attention to the accolades that we're getting. Pay attention, even the null space, right? Even the null space, the space, I'm using a math term, but let's not make it mathy. The null space, the people who are either here nor there, that's a win in many cases too. Because if there's 17 positive people that are clapping, the rest of the people aren't doing anything, and maybe one person is kind of like, oh, you suck. You're not going to hear that person. You should only hear the 17, but we're trained to hear the 1. We're trained to hear the 2. And then that voice, we self-replicate, because that's the one that keeps us up at night. And that's the one that's going to keep you from reaching your great heights. It's going to happen every time. It's happened to all of us. It's paralyzing. It's the thing that we fear a lot. And a lot of times we're creating this reality. And that leads to mental health problems. And that leads to issues. For me, it's led to bleeding teeth. I mean, I didn't even know that your teeth can bleed when you're stressed. It was happening to me. I had a lot of other things going on at the time, but like the dentist, first thing they said, I was like, I just want to tell you, like, I was coming in and like randomly, like my teeth would be bleeding in the middle of the day. And dentist turns to me, she goes, are you under high stress? I was like, the worst stress in my life has been like the last like 2 weeks. She's like, yeah, it's just a symptom of really high stress. I was like, what? It's like your teeth can manifest bleeding. I'm sure somebody out there knows that. I had no idea. I still haven't even read up on that enough. I'm like, your freaking teeth can start bleeding as a sign of stress. Your body reacts. It's again going back to the metaphor. You're gonna drop one of those balls you trying to juggle. Don't be a Superman. Don't be a Wonder Woman. Don't be a superhero when it comes to the stress you're carrying. You gotta unload it. You have to let it go. You cannot carry that kind of stuff around and be like, but dude told me, yo, that I sucked and blah, blah, blah. It was like, you didn't hear the other, like, again, like the other 200 people in the crowd who were like, yo, trying to get your autograph and stuff like that. You're thinking about the one person. It's like, what's wrong with us, bro? What's wrong? Maybe it's a survival instinct or something, because that might be the dangerous person, right? So maybe it's evolved as a survival tactic. We got to pay attention to the threat, right? It makes sense, right? From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense that we want to detect the naysayer, to detect the person who stab us in the back kind of thing. I get it. I do get it. But in terms of when you're on an artist platform, that cannot influence your writing and your performance, that you're trying to please the one person who doesn't like what you're doing. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. That person should not be in your view. And I say this right before I bring Mr. Fly in again, if he's got his vocals, which I'm hoping. I know he's having a little issue there, but when we do that as artists, when we do that, we stop being as creative. We stop taking chances. That voice from other people becomes us, and we replay that scenario. It leads to our stress. It knocks you off the hill. It makes you build excuses. It makes you not go running. It makes you not go to the gym. It makes you not work on the lyrics because you're giving yourself a reason, just like you do when you want to eat that chocolate chip cookie. Like, I deserve it. What? You deserve to eat some fattening, gross stuff. You'll find a way. I found a way to say, I deserve that ice cream over there, right? Or some other kind of word like, oh, yeah, I've been doing so well. I think I'll eat something that's going to totally sabotage me. Right? It's the same mentality, right? So you got to let it go. You got to let it go and be like, narrow your market. Stop trying to please everybody in the entire world, you know? And if, what up? Yes, my goodness, man. Speaking of motivational people, I got to put that comment up there right there. Yes, Ponte. Shout out to my former student. Words of wisdom on a Friday night. Much appreciated. Man, love you, bro. I hope all's going well for you, man. I miss NU, bro. I miss NU. I'm always looking for an excuse to teach a class part-time or something like that. So let them know. I hope things are going well for you right now. But yeah, it's like the thing is this, like, so many of us. Oh, I think Fly's here. I'm gonna bring him in. I'm gonna roll with this and then bring him right on in. Is like, if we have sound, do we got a sound check from Mr. Fly? Oh, I hear him. No, I hear you. I hear you moving.
Can you hear me?
I got you. Let me finish this thought here, and I got to bring you right in on this. And it's like, we get into a situation where we're not comfortable, we're not confident enough to know that there are sometimes maybe it's you're one in a million, right? It's like, let's do the math on that. If you 1 in a million, right? How many more are there in you a billion, right? That means there's 1,000 people just like you. Okay. You got 1,000 people like you for every billion if you 1 in a million, because 1,000 million is a billion. And we know, I mean, I know there's, getting close to 8 billion people on the globe, right? Give or take. And it's like, let's say 1/3 of them are potentially people who could possibly hear you someday, right? Let's just say that if you're on every platform in the world, like, who's the most recognized person, right? Out of that, let's say there's just 3 billion alone. You took those 1,000 and you multiplied it times 3, right? But the thing is that when we're talking in generality, like, hey, I'm a rapper who likes to self-educate, right? I like to do lifelong learning. That's a pretty common thing. Like, I can probably, that's not a 1 in a million thing, right? How many people do you think like hip hop and also want to do self-betterment? Like, they want to get better, right? We want to learn more. If you position it that way, then you say, wow, this market over here is huge for what I'm actually doing. You take someone like Fly, an inspirational rapper. How many people want to be inspired? Right? But when you think about it, you can be very limiting. We can say, well, I am a Christian rapper, right? Or I'm a professor who raps. We might be narrowing a little bit too much when you really think in a broader sense. we're both doing the same thing, which is probably the basis of why we click. It's like inspirational, motivational, trying to self-betterment, right? It's really about trying to be better, make the world a better place, leave an imprint, that kind of stuff. Now you open up to a massive market, and you don't have to feel like that you're alone on an island, because the world is freaking huge, right? So if even you're 1 in 1,000, now you've multiplied by a factor of 1,000 compared to being 1 in a million. And we're probably not so special that we are 1 in a million on any of the things that we segment ourselves. It's probably a lot closer to 1 in 10, right? There's probably, like, I like to think like, hey, I'm on an island, right? 'Cause I'm a rapping professor, or he's, faith-based rapper or whatever. Yo, there's a lot more than you think. Welcome them in, cater to them always, and screw the metaphorical naysayer that you're hearing. That's probably just you in your own head. What up, Fly?
That's the truth, brother.
That's all we try to do, man. That's all we try to do.
Yeah,
Give them the truth.
that's the truth, man. I don't much, and you're the math professor, so I don't know how probability plays into this.
All right, let me hear.
But there's always, and maybe you touched on this a little bit already too, but just finding that not just most people don't know what their niche is, like what they are, what makes them, as you mentioned, there's not necessarily a true one in a.
Yeah,
we're more common than we think, and we have more in common as people than we often like to admit. Culture, we all think we different.
yeah. We
really,
think we're special,
most
right?
of us are.
We are, and we're not.
We all
we are on one hand, we're
Right.
definitely unique, right? In the largest sense,
Yeah.
like there is only one Fly, right?
Right.
But the things that I identify as Fly, taken separately, fall into huge buckets and categories.
Huge buckets, brother.
This
Huge
is, but this is,
buckets.
to your point though, this is literally probability. This is the rule of probability that defines probability, that makes it so difficult for us to first accept. And I've said this multiple times, and it literally is the word multiple. Every time you do something in probability, it's multiplied, and it's basically multiplying fractions. So if there's 1 out of 10 people does this thing that Fly does, and 1 out of 5 do this other thing that Fly does, it's 1 out of 5 times 1 out of 10, and it's 1 out of 50, right? So if 50% of the population likes chocolate ice cream, and you like chocolate ice cream, and 50% of the population likes pepperoni pizza over cheese pizza, and you have pepperoni pizza and chocolate ice cream, you can multiply those probabilities together, and finding someone who does those both together, that the multiply sense is the together part.
Yeah.
And it gets into a little bit more complicated. We get into a thing called Bayes' theorem, which a lot of people that know math would probably know, and it's a lesson we can teach fairly quickly. It's really not that complex, though the formula looks very messy. It really starts to get in what you know about when an event's already happened, changes the basis for the next probability. It gets into the idea of independent and dependent events and so forth, but it's like when you know something about what's happened before, it should change the expected value of what's going to happen in the future. It sort of changes the numerator, and in some cases will change the denominator depending on the situation. But the actions going on in the numerator in this particular case, and things are being multiplied. And we don't need to make it very mathy. It's just like saying, you flip a coin, you got heads or tails, right? You do it 3 times. It's a binary choice, but that's 1 out of 2 chance for it being what you think it's going to be. And before you know it, if you do it 5 times, it's basically 2 to the 5th power as your denominator, which is 32. So you have a 1 in 32 chance of doing something that has a 50-50 5 times in a row. When you do it 10 times in a row, you get close to the millions way faster than you think. Because, if we just do this little bit of math, right? If you just start doubling numbers and you hold your fingers up, that's whatever power to 2 it is. So everything to the 0 is 1, right? So you put the next, we're doing powers of 2, which is really binary. We go 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. If we do that again, we'll be into the millions. We get to 2,048, 4,096, 8,192, 16,300. You just keep going. You can see that that's going to replicate itself, that another power of 1,000 will come about. You'll approximately be into the millions when you do another set of 10 of those, right? So 2 to the 20th, that means if you flipped a coin 20 times in a row and got the same thing, that's going to happen about 1 in a million. That's what 1 in a million really means. It's like flipping a coin 20 times and getting the same thing every time. Does that seem like something that's normal? Right? Does it seem like
not at all?
Right? Like if you saw someone flip a coin and 20 times, you'd say that's not a fair coin. It's weighted, it's balanced, someone's pulling a trick. But guess what? 1 out of 20 times, right? Excuse me, 1 out of a million times, those 20 flips are going to come up the same way. Now, if a billion people are playing this game, it doesn't look so special because you're going to see it 1,000 times if there's a billion people playing. So when we look at things on a world scale, it's why when we start talking about things that are super uncommon, but when you got billions of people, it becomes very common. And this leads into the discussion of the possibilities and probabilities of life in the universe. When it is berserkly bigger than just the amount of people that are on the Earth, when we're talking about how many stars there are just in our galaxy, we're quickly approximating to trillions of stars in our own galaxy, right? You take a few galaxies and you're clearly in the trillions, right? Just a few. And we know that there's hundreds of billions of galaxies. So when you start talking about what's the probability of life, it depends what that first initial probability is that we think that we're special, right? Like what are you? Is Earth special? Well, we don't have anything else to base it on, but you got to come up with some number that you say, okay, what's the probability that these things could have arranged and happened, right? And then when you sum that up for all of the stars that have planets, this is a thing actually called the Drake equation. The Drake equation is just really a relatively simple equation that is modeling for you the probability that there would be intelligent life somewhere else in the universe. And it could be a slug, if we want to call that intelligent, or it could be something much more sentient and much more active. So without going down the bunny hole of that kind of stuff, you can quickly start to see where you can estimate where things feel like, oh, that might be out of the ordinary. Oh, that's very normal. And when we do this as an artist, when we think about on just a small scale of like, just use a few things. Like I like comics, anime. I like math. I like science. I love my son more than anything in the entire universe, right? So if there was a rapper who's rapping about being a good parent, comics, anime, science fiction, science, math, I'm going to love that person, and that person is going to be intimately into what I do. But how many people are there like that, right? And you can start to do the math, and then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, there's millions of people like that. I just should be catering to those people. And one person over there who's like, you dork. You know what I'm saying? But we listen to the person who called us a dork because it hurts us. And so we don't become the light that we're supposed to be. That's it.
That's the truth, man. Yeah, focus on your thing. I mean, play the probability to the best of your ability. But you point. It's important to know who you are and what your thing is and what you're good at, and not really pay as much attention to other people's opinion and point of view of you, because you'll always have an audience of something. Is if you just focus on what it is that you do and just work on perfecting and be really good. The same ways on the other side with that probability. Like, we often think about how unique we may be. We don't often think about how many people there are, like you just said, that have anything going rock with us just because we're similar.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll listen to our music just because they're inspiring. There's a lot of people, like you said, out there that just want to be inspired. And so too often it's the kind of people we want to impress, and it's usually aiming for that popularity. Spot the streams on Spotify. We aim for those things because that's how we've been. That if you're not on a chart, then you're not really accomplishing anything. As you've proven so many times that there's a segment within the society be accomplished and successful, and most of the people who listen to hip hop don't even need so many people that listen to hip hop now, and you can still make a living doing it, and you can still be successful. Your real, true passion is to just do it for that. Do it for the love. I mean, you know, do it for, and whatever comes of it, to me, is just a bonus.
I was in a discussion the other day, and I was talking about the word just, and it reminded me because something Fee said. We were doing an interview the other day for the record, and Fee was like, in one of his lyrics is, do it for the culture and the freedom. That's the reason. He literally says the reason. Do it for the culture and the freedom. That's the reason. And it's interesting because depending on how you take that line, the freedom could be financial freedom, mental freedom, freedom of creative artistic expression, right? Like he could be talking about a lot of things right there. And it's funny how the juxtaposition of freedom with financial freedom and doing it for the culture, right, are looked at as badges of honor almost, where it's like, I do it for the culture unquestionably, but I don't just do it for the culture. I damn straight do it to make money as well.
Right.
So like meaning that if I'm putting good stuff out into the universe, I want to be able to be self-sufficient doing this, and I need to make money from it, or else it ceases to happen and it becomes just for the culture. And we know what happens to people who do things just for the culture. They just go away because you can't sustain unless you're doing it in your room and you don't have to sustain. Like if I'm going to make something that I need to put out, it needs to be well received because it's costly. It's a time investment. It's doing the ProQuo album that we did, which is the reason Fly and Jay and me, we're like, oh, we got more joints coming. The Freedom Corner joint is going to be worked to radio. Apologize is going to be worked to radio. Dive in it is going to be worked to radio. And Grandma Stories will probably have a video when Quo and I figure out what we can do for that video to give that justability. And we made those songs to be long lasting because of the grind that this actually is and how much wear and tear it puts on us. Quo is a perfect testament to that. Talking about like the things you got to go through, like dude's got to get the bank straight because dude's making power moves. He's like, yo, I got to buy this condo for my family kind of thing. Right. It's like, I got to do that instead of doing X, Y, and Z because I might not be where you at in your financial stratus or where this guy's at or this guy's at. So I got to get the nuts in a line before I can go make the power move. So when you make an album like that, that's looking that far into the future, we were having those discussions back when we started making this about what we're doing it for. You couldn't find more people that are just for the culture. But I would also remind him and remind everybody else that we can't just be about doing it for the right reasons. It has to at some point be something that can reinvest back into yourself so you can afford to do it, or else you're never going to get to hear Quo. And Quo, as far as I'm concerned, is doper than me. I'd rather listen to Quo than listen to myself. I tell him that all the time. Lyrically, it's different. I love lyrics, so I'm going to say, is Quo the same lyricist as me in a different way? I like the lyrics I do, so I'm not saying I'd rather hear Quo's rhymes. I'd rather listen to Quo sonically because he's so dope sonically, and the way he puts words together and his thoughts, and it's just totally different than how I do it. So I'm attracted to that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's insane. But if we're going to do this so that there can be a Quo and it can be a Fly and it can be a me, and that we can continue to do that at that kind of level, you have to be more than just for the culture, because the culture has to be, you're part of that culture. You become not part of that culture if it can't sustain you. So artists got to not be like, oh my gosh, I'm like, no, you got to be able to be deadpan. I was saying this last week. You got to be deadpan when someone goes, oh, how much could you come for? We're a great organization and we're doing it for the kids and the babies and the baby seals and everything. Cool. It's $5,000, right? Like you got to be able to do that because I'm going to feed those seals, that culture, those kids or whatever. And you have to be willing to say that number that is, or you're going to have that mental stress that you're going to go home and you're going to go, I know I was worth $5,000. Every single person in the world has a story and it's probably valid. And we like to think most people are valid. But when we start discounting what it is that we do in any profession because of the story that other people are saying, well, you discounted your story. Because if I could only tell you the things I had to do to get to this point, right? Like you'd be like, can I start a Kickstarter for you? You know what I mean? Like I don't do Kickstarters, but you know what I mean? I don't do Kickstarters or whatever. I don't put my DM up there to, with my cash out. That's not how I get down. But I was also just saying in another interview the other day, it was like, I also need to do better saying when I need help too. Like, yo, this is what I need help on. This is what I need help on. So what I need help on is when I'm calling a show and you trying to discount me to $1,250 when I started at $5,000, I need you to come up to $3,000. Like, I need you to pay for my man Fly to come so that he can come on that show too, so that he can learn my dubs and I can learn his better. Like, or else it's just me coming, you know. And same thing for Fly. Fly needs to be able to ask a number that can make the whole Freedom Corner show happen instead of just one person, right? Or else you're gonna see subpar. But people are real cool to discount themselves for somebody else's charity that you didn't build. I'm sure you got plenty of plans that you've been trying to build. And if we all do that, guess what? Everybody's going crazy trying to do for somebody else's thing. It's kind of like, not to sound like I'm bashing charities, but it's like, you know, if you were at the CVS thing in the line where it says, do you want to round up? Right. I tell you, I round up never when that thing is like, I never round up. Like, I'm like, round up. I want you to round down. Like, like CVS, I want you to round down for me because I want to save money at your store. Like, I don't want your charity that you've picked for you to have as a tax write-off be my charity.
Exactly.
Like, I want to be in control of my charity. Now, we've all felt the peer pressure though when the person's looking at us that's probably like doesn't care either way, and they're looking at us just a pair of eyeballs going, would you like to round up today, sir? I've definitely said yeah from the peer pressure of someone looking at me go, I don't want to be a jerk. Like, man, it's 1086. You telling me I can't round up 14 cents? Like, but would I do it when it's a machine? Never. I've never hit round. I'm just being honest. I've never hit round up on a machine in my life, and I never will, because my principle is I don't want to round up for your charity because you ain't rounded up for mine. And I don't even know if you really like, is CVS giving a penny of their money? No, they're giving all their customers money to the charity and they look like the superhero, right? Meanwhile, they're not asking you, hey, Pro, are there any charities you care about? Yeah, there's like 6. What are you doing for me, CVS? What are you doing for me, Coca-Cola? And we don't think like that. We quickly acquiesce to whatever somebody else's thing is. And I'm not saying don't give to what it is you want to get. I'm saying that directly. Give to what it is you want to give. Don't let someone pressure you into their thing to discount what you do and that you've worked your life to do, man. We got to put a pause in that and be able to say, we got to practice, role play, do it, whatever. Like we did before. Hey, Fly, how much you charge? $3,000. $3,000. Guess what? Have a nice day. $3,000. Right. And be comfortable with the number that you won't go lower than when you get to that number. I'm not saying you lead with that number. I'm not telling you to negotiate that way. I'm just saying whatever number is firm in your head, don't go lower than that number, because you're going to be kicking and punching yourself when you do it. And this is more for people that are there. They're like to the point where they should be getting paid fairly for what they're doing, when you can honestly look at the competition around you and say, you know what? I'm just as good, if not better than these people.
Not better.
Yeah, they're getting bigger. I'm not saying when you come out and you're managing them and telling you you're nice. I'm like, you might have a few more dues to pay than that. But I'm saying when you're on the stage and you're the one killing it all the time and you were just playing for $300, $200, or $50 in gas money or whatever, and you know there's a headliner who got $1,500 and you're like, what? Man, like they live in state. And I drove like 50 miles to come for this thing. And but like what? And I'm staying at 2 a.m. What? Like I'm saying when you start getting to that place, you gotta be willing to know what you stand for, because otherwise it also gets out there that you discount your stuff, that you're somebody who's gonna do. Yo, I'm comfortable not doing the show for 4 months. You know, I'm just comfortable at that point, as opposed to doing it at a 50% discount. And again, it's probability, because I know I'm confident that someone else is gonna come along who's gonna pay, if not full price, very close to it. And all you need is one to make up for the fact that you cut that thing in half. So that's it. Screw CVS.
Yeah, I the same kind of philosophy when it came to just giving. I always believe in just giving in what is my philosophy. So if I don't feel compelled to give, I don't usually make a decision based on what I think. You know, because everybody has needs, and I believe most people need help in some way, shape. So if I don't feel compelled, and I'm not basing it on whether or not you need it or not, or because I believe we all need some kind of support. So I'm not here to do this when it comes to what I decide to be charitable about. I am based on things that are compelling to me, that are close to my principles and my values, and I just play it from there. I mean, I've passed up opportunities to give when I good calls, but it just, for me to just want the timing.
Yeah.
It was just
No,
a
I got
thing.
you.
Just want the timing, and I've probably given to situations, things that I've passed up on, and so I'm saying that to really emphasize the point of structure.
Right.
Just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, to have a structure, basically have a made up mind, know who you are, know what you want to do, know what you're aiming for, know what your goal, aim for. Don't discount yourself, don't discredit yourself, do not allow anyone else to do it. We're all in a different place in life, so for me, it definitely has to be an individual choice. Because situations, we all had different levels of passion, or even, if I can say, whether it's professionally or financially, and so it has to be your thing. Is to be confident and maneuvering in that arena, and so, and we've all got paid for shows. When it comes down to it, like yeah, I'll do this one, or no, I'm not ever going to do that again.
I had I ended up, speaking of giving, I gave $20 2 days ago to a charity that it's not really a charity, but they were doing a drive, and I'm totally in line with what they do. They're a community-based organization. They're a very hip-hop friendly organization. I gave them $20, right? And I think about that. You think about every fraction of a dollar, just to do the math, right? Like, there's an equal chance that when you go to the store and that you're given change, that it's going to be 1018 or it's going to be 1098, right? It's kind of random and arbitrary, right? So with that mindset, there's an equal chance that it's going to be over 50 cents or under 50 cents. So the average basically has no reason not to be 50 cents, right? Meaning that the change perfectly in a perfect scenario will somewhere filter in at about 50-50. So let's think 50 cents. Every time you make a transaction, the average expected value back is 50 cents, right? So how many 50 cents are there in $20, right? It's like 20 is $1, so you double it. There's 40. So that's 40 donations that I could have made at CVS. It would have taken me 40 times to do that. I would have had to hit yes 40 times. But this thing that I'm actually in line with, I can give $20. And in my head, that's what I was thinking. That's the math that went on, that basic math. I'm like, how much am I going to give them? And I'm like, man, all the damn times I go into CVS and I'm sitting there and I hit that no button. I'm like thinking just from that money, I'm like, yeah, I got $20 to give him. And I feel like that's a good cause. And it's funny too. I did not expect this. It already paid dividends. That seed, right? If you think of it as like tithing, right? It actually paid dividends in a way that was totally unexpected to me. And it may have had something to do with that, truthfully, because it is very directly connected to that. But it turned into $500 in my benefit, which I wasn't looking for. In fact, I was open about the fact that I wasn't looking for that. And but it happened nonetheless. And so that's the kind of thing where it's like, you just like any community with money isn't charity. That we should disconnect that, right? A lot of people, I hear people say, oh, I'll just give my time. Whoa, slow down, partner. Like, I'll just give my time. So that means you value your time less than the money, which is crazy, because money is the thing that allows us to buy freedom of time in many cases, right? And many of the things that we need as necessities. Like, it's like you can only have downtime from the money that you're earning in your active time or your passive income if you're lucky enough to have it. But when you say just my time, I'm like, whoa, hey, that's the thing. That is the most precious commodity you have, because it is finite.
Yes.
So it's like every time we make a decision to do something, it's like, yo, the clock is running. That's how you got to think about it. And when we start thinking about it that way, I think we treat ourselves better with our time. So when I say someone's like, oh, I could use your time, I'm like, yo, I'd rather write the check. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather write the check. That's when you know you're good, right? Because when you're at the point when you've kind of made this decision mentally, you're probably in a better sane place. Mentally, physically, and fiscally, you're probably in a better spot when you start recognizing that you can afford to do that and that you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to. Meaning, not, I'm reading the messages too, but giving your time is not the first thing you should be doing, especially if it doesn't align with you. Like, I'm sorry, I've paid my dues with helping people move. Like if anybody needs to ask, I'm not that dude. Right? I don't have 5 hours to help you move and to throw up my back. Like I gotta make sure my back is good when my son is riding on my back in the pool. I gotta start thinking about those things. And it's like I've paid my dues and move. Yeah, I'm a big dude. I can probably help you move pretty effectively. Don't call me. Because I'm thinking like what I would charge you. Like what amount of money would you actually charge someone to move their house? If they're like, hey, I'd like to pay you to move my house. I just want to know what's your rate. I don't know about you, but my rate is easy $1,000, like easy, right? Because I'm like, yo, I can get $1,000 in 15 minutes doing a rap show.
Hey,
I'm like, you want me to
bro.
move your stuff for 4 hours? I'm watching the movers across the street move, and they get the weight belts on. It's like 100 degrees outside, and I'm thinking, yo, there's no chance they're making more than $20 an hour. That's actually pretty good, right? Imagine if they're making $20 an hour to move, right? Stuff. Maybe they're union, and let's go crazy. Let's say they make $40 an hour, right? To make that, it's like, just truthfully, most of us make more than $40 an hour at our job if we're at a stable place in life when you really think down the money, right? Because 40 times 40, $1,600 a week. If you work 50 hours a week, that's 80 grand. If you're making 80 grand a year, you're making $40 an hour and you have benefits and you're probably in a much better like health relationship if you're not doing the manual labor that's equivalent to moving a truck, right? But how long is your life expectancy if you're unpacking trucks? How long is your back going to be good, right? And I'm like, I think about that. These dudes, if they're crazy making $40 an hour, they're working 8-hour days, they're moving every single day, someone for $320. Sorry, bro. I ain't that boat. You know what I mean? It's like, that's gotta be like, I'm like, yo, you want me to unpack? I used to do that, granted, I did mostly smaller packages for UPS, but I'm like, I did that stuff while I was 18 years old, man, unpacking trucks in the heat. I thought it was great exercise. Some days I was wearing the weight belt. Other days I was in small sort up there with envelopes, which was really great. But still, man, you up there, you moving, you breaking your back. And I was like, at the time I was probably making $10 an hour or something. And I'm like, yo, you cannot pay me. You cannot afford me to move your truck. And then when I think about my skills moving a truck compared to my skills rapping, I'm like, most of the time in my head, I'm saying, you can't afford me to come rap at your event. That's the same way that I'm thinking. I do want to do it. I do want to get paid. I do want it to make money. But most of the time, what I know I'm worth is probably not worth to you. And so the trick is finding a medium, an equilibrium point that works for both of you that's not unreasonable so that you can do the show if you actually want to do it. And then like that's the question you got to ask yourself. It's like, what's your floor? What's your ceiling of your worth? Like a school calls me, I'm saying in my head, I want 20 grand. I know that I'm worth 20 grand. Now, if you only get 50 people coming to the show, it's probably not worth it. But it's like, I know what people are charging. Yo, if some dude like Wiz Khalifa is charging $180,000 to come rock your concert in the summer, right? Just because people are like, oh my God, it's Wiz Khalifa. I can definitely make people go, oh my God, it's lyrical for $180,000. I can have elephants, trumpets,
the whole
like
whole setup, bro.
Yep, I can have people wiping the sweat from your brow as you walk in, and fanning you personally for $180,000. So imagine what I would do with 20. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's the way we gotta think about it. It's like, yo, Wiz Khalifa's making like $200,000 to come rock for an hour. Are you serious, bro? Like, I will out rap Wiz Khalifa tomorrow, yesterday, and every day of the year. Sorry, Wiz. You know what I'm saying? You're dope, but I got you. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I know what you're paying for. You're paying for the name. And people go, oh my God, I can't believe it's Wiz Khalifa. So taking that into consideration, and what would you charge? Oh yeah, I can charge one ninth of what Wiz Khalifa does. Yeah, but no, we're gonna say no, I'm worth $5 grand. Bro, let me explain to you. There are rappers currently that charge $500,000 to rap. I can look you in the face and go, yeah, 20 grand. Absolutely. No problem.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm going to do in your face? I'm going to motivationally speak. I'm going to kiss the babies. I'm going to lift your people up, and you're going to hear some incredible rapping. Yeah, 20 grand's like pretty fair. Get it while you can. You know what I'm saying? So everybody watching, that doesn't mean I won't take you $5 grand if it's close. You know what I'm saying? Make that call. But
make that call, brother. No,
and Pro come and sign the books. You know what I mean? Like sign the records, kiss the babies.
That's dope, bro. That's
speaking
dope,
of kiss the babies, man. I gotta get it moving because we're doing the vacation thing. So
vacation. That's what I'm talking about, bro. My birthday is next week.
We got all kinds of
Town.
vacation plans, man. You get the birthday plans, man. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. I don't know if you can come through
Yeah.
next Friday. We got I was gonna say Wiz Khalifa. Wiz is not coming out of the ProQuo Show. Wiz, I didn't mean it personally. I'm just talking about your price, bro. It's like I rap better than you. But here's the thing, and that's open for everybody in the world, by the way. But while we're at it,
Exactly.
what except Quo. Quo, I got something for you too. Like don't quiet as kept. No, Far Side, man. We got Slim Kid Trey's coming through with Angel next week from the Far Side. We interviewing them, and we hoping to have Quo here for that as well too. So if Quo can make the schedule work, we're gonna do it.
When's the Cali thing, the festival, the film festival?
That's the 20th.
20th. Okay. Shucks. I probably should have waited.
And Dive In It comes out. Not Dive In It. I'm sorry. Dark Poetry. We'll start with D's. Dark Poetry comes out to the 18th. So if you haven't pre-saved, holler. That comes out.
I probably should have waited and did my vacation.
I'm not going. I'm not going. So far, I have no plans to go to. I'm not. Nah, man. They're not paying to fly me out. They don't have that in the
already. When you say less, brother. You said you wasn't going. I already knew what the deal was. Like, okay.
Right. They ain't like, hey, Pro, we want to write your check just to be gracing us with your presence at our. I wish they had it like that, but no, they are good people. They definitely invited me, and they were trying to get me to come, and I was really trying to make it work too. But I was like, it's really tough because it's the first week that we go back, and for school. School, professional development week for us, which is important to what I do, is the week before, and so it's right in the middle of the week. In fact, the 18th, which is the day of the release, is the day that we have professional development day for all the faculty at my campus that I run. And the 19th and 20th are the next 2 days. And 20th, I actually have a couple meetings, but it's really a day that faculty are doing their planning for teaching. So I could do it, but it's a tough week, especially if I had to be leaving on the 19th, which is that Thursday before. It's like, flying out the first day. And not to mention that there's some stuff coming up a couple weeks right after that around the corner and all kinds of good stuff. So tough week. I would love to go chill on the little red carpet, do that kind of stuff. But unless some mystery school calls me from California and was like, Pro, we'd love you to come out. Actually, we're looking for you to come out on the 20th. Really? How about the 21st? Maybe we can make it on a Saturday. Could you make it on a Thursday? Yeah, okay. And maybe that would get me out there. But otherwise, it's going to be tough. I'd be taking a pretty big L to head out there if I'm just going on my own.
Yeah, man. All the way out there. That's the other side of the country, bro. It ain't cheap to get to Cali right now. Yeah, man.
We had this discussion before. Like, wait a minute, I'm flying on my own and paying for something? Like, what's going on with this? What? There's nothing. I'm like, every time I travel now, it's for personal use. I'm always like keeping my receipts and stuff. And I'm like, oh wait, there's no need to keep the receipts. Like, I'm paying for this. Like, what's going on here? Weird feeling.
All right, brother, man.
That was Fly. I am Pro. There's a couple of things I was gonna share with you, but on this particular browser, it's not really doing the audio like the way that we wanted it to do. So I'm not gonna share the stuff I wanted to go out on. And I'm gonna have to read more up about this particular browser. I had to use it because my other one was crashing. It was wild. So I had to use this browser as the backup, and it doesn't like playing the audio the same way as the other. So we're going to let you slide out. Hey, if you haven't checked it out and you happen to be like one of the 4 people that check this out on the YouTube page, youtube.com/the ProQuo Show or youtube.com/Lyrical of Invasion. I posted a video on the Lyrical of Invasion page. It's the highlights to the TED Talk we were talking about. And I also posted one me talking about education. It's literally the talk that I was telling you guys I was having right after I did the whole 20 minutes of chilling in the park, kind of clearing my head thing. That's when I turned the camera on. You can see kind of what my state of mind was about some of the things that I cleared up in my head too that we didn't get to that were about education. So check that out if you like. And that's it. All right. I hope you guys check us out next week. We got Slim Kid on the Far Side coming through. Quo alert. And we'll be here with the Angel and her new song, which is crazy. She's amazing. If you haven't met her before, y'all gonna love her. So tune in. Feel free to ask questions too. Keep them coming through, and they will encourage that. See your tree, and do your Far Side homework. If you don't remember, they keep on passing me by. Who, by the way, were in the movie the other day. They went to see with my son. I was telling some of you guys that I went to go see the superhero, the DC superhero, and they were playing that song. And I'm like, yo, he's coming on. So if you didn't hear me say that before, now you did. All right. Peace, y'all. I'm Pro, and I'm out.